Ain't nobody doing it like us. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Credo Conversations. Today we have a very special episode. We've been trying to get this guy on here for like 6 months at this point. We have the pleasure of sitting down with someone who brings a different perspective to the music scene. This person is the founder of the management agency Atherlace. He's worked with artists like Cronin, Dev Soder, Dylan. They've combined for millions of views on their songs across all music platforms. It's an honor to introduce the one and only Tyler Donovan, formerly known as the local guy Ty. I appreciate you, brother, coming in and sitting down with us, man. I just want to say real quick about like the story of how we met, because I think it's kind of funny, like a good story of right place, right time, I guess. We were at Cisco Brewery.
Yep.
And
spot, Seaport.
Great spot. And we were sitting, me and my buddy were sitting there playing cornhole, and we needed 2 people to play against. Yep. You just so happened to be walking down at the same time, and I swear to God, I just looked over, saw you guys, and I was like, "You guys want to play cornhole with us?" And then next thing you know, almost a year and a half or a year now.
Yeah, that was a while ago.
Was it 2 years, man?
It could have been, dude. It was definitely. It was at least one summer.
At least one summer ago.
Yeah.
And now we're here, bro. I'm excited to sit down and talk to you. I think it's cool. We've had one artist on, 6 months ago. His name's King from '98, and we got kind of a perspective of the music field from an artist standpoint. Mm-hmm. But I want to talk to you because you have a perspective from a different point of view, right? So you're on the management side. Before we talk about exactly what you do, let's talk about Atherlace as as an entity, as a brand. What exactly is it, and how it got started?
Yeah, so the interesting story about like how I started that company, I started like my junior year of college, like in my dorm room. Like I've always kind of entered into the music scene, as we were talking about earlier, as a creative. I was doing a lot of creative and art direction and album rollouts for artists that were local, and then over time I built that into working with artists that were signed to major labels and a few things, like most recently like 44 Phantom. I don't know if you're familiar with Machine Gun Kelly.
Yep.
He was just on tour with Machine Gun Kelly, and like so I was working a lot with these guys in creative direction. And nowadays, bro, with the way the world works and how like low just people's like attention rates are,
yep,
marketing and creative direction kind of just go hand in hand. So like I was learning more about the marketing side of the business the more I was working with these artists and the labels. So I was like, dude, you know what? Why don't I just like combine this into one little kind of firm and
mm-hmm.
then just like do this for artists? So that's basically how it got started.
And when was it founded? How long ago?
2020, I want to say. We signed our first official artist, I want to say the end of 2020.
That's awesome, man. And who was the first artist you ended up signing?
His name is the China Blue. He's from Providence, Rhode Island. We no longer work together, but like super dope, super talented artist, like very much like the 1975, that type of music, like indie alternative stuff. He's super, super tight. So.
And talking about just genres, like do you work with specific people in specific genres, or is it just a wide array?
Most of the artists I work with, I would say, primarily lie in like the indie pop kind of alternative space. So like for those people who don't know what that is, it's like people like Dominic Fike or that range of music. But Cronin and Dylan are 2 kind of examples of people that I work in outside. Dylan's more of like a sad pop, like Jeremy Zucker, Alexander 23, kind of Chelsea Cutler vibe. Mm-hmm. And then Cronin primarily works with like, he was pop rap when like Mike Stud and all those people, like he was making music like that. Like he has songs with like Sammy Adams. He's got a record. He's got 2 records with Sammy Adams, and like so he was around when that was all going on. Cause he's been making music for like 12 years. Now he's kind of shifted into like this EDM dance scene. We just put out a record with this kid Charlie Wonder, who just got off tour with 2 friends. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely moving in that direction. Just because like the pop rap stuff isn't as like popping anymore.
No, not as much anymore.
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard sell being like a white kid.
What was that, like 2010s to like 2015? I feel like that's when that stuff was really
popping. Like Sammy Adams, Huey Mack, all those kids, and it was just like white frat dudes like rapping about sports references and chicks and stuff like that. So yeah,
the golden age, though. The golden age, man.
The best music, dude. It's awesome.
So let's go back though, like way back in the day, right? I mean, you've always been a creative person, from what I've gauged from you for the couple minutes that we were talking, and I want to know, like, when did your mind kind of go away from the generic, I guess, perspective from someone who was a teenager growing up trying to figure out his way, to now you kind of know what your skills are, what your interests are, and how you're kind of growing something that's, I would say, atypical field for someone your age to be in, right? You know, I don't know too many people who work for management companies who see behind the scenes with artists, and I kind of want to pick your brain on how you went from whatever you were when you were younger in your teenage years to where we are now.
Yeah, so kind of, I mean, like we were talking about earlier, you can relate to being like, you know, you're like in the Boston area, you're an athlete, you grow up, most of the athletes around here are marketing degrees, finance degrees, stuff like that. So when I was in high school, that's just how I thought I was going to be. Typical baseball, hockey kid was like, all right, I'll go to college, 4 years, play sports, get a marketing degree, come out and get some sort of business job.
Yeah.
And then like around my sophomore year of high school, I was like aimlessly scrolling YouTube one day, like found a Photoshop tutorial on how to design like a sports poster or something like that, watched it, was intrigued in it, then did a lot more like research and found out it's a viable career path.
Absolutely.
And not only was it viable, it was booming. Like every company was starting to hire creative directors and different designers, and so that's kind of like I started teaching myself self-taught through YouTube tutorials like creative direction, and then that moved into college where I started working with artists and a bunch of different clients in a bunch of different industries. Like I worked at like DraftKings, I've worked with several universities and stuff like that, and then that, just like I said, working with artists built that into what it was. Yeah.
So Atherlace originally started as a media company, specifically, right? So when did do you still do the media side of it, or is it really only management with artists specifically? You know, do you do both, or is one lane, right?
Right now, Atherlace is strictly music, and that's the way I'd like to keep it. Originally, when I started it, it was a multi-hyphenate design studio. I had like people from all over the United States and even all over the world as like what we would consider like in-house contractors.
Wow,
So we're like, we'd work on projects where like we'd offer like package deals. So for example, if a brand wanted to, a startup company came to us and they needed a website done, but they also needed branding and they needed motion designs and they needed marketing collateral, like we had an in-house team that would handle all of that. So that's kind of how it originally started. And then as I shifted more into the music stuff and that being more of like what I was doing full time, that's when I transitioned it into like a management firm.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
That's wow.
Very big jump.
Dude, that is a jump.
Very
And
big
that's,
jump.
I feel like that's a risk too, right? I mean,
Huge risk.
Media was what you were comfortable in first, right?
Huge
All
risk.
the creative side was what you were comfortable in first. What was it like kind of getting out of your comfort zone?
I mean, I think that like as I got older and the more I even like stepped into music, like even before I transitioned, I was getting like piece by piece a little bit more into the industry. I started to realize like I enjoyed putting myself in positions where I was uncomfortable because I realized the growth was kind of on that side of the spectrum. When you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, dude, like the growth that you gain out of that, rather than just sitting in the same place for the next like 3 years, like it's just like second to none. So that was kind of why I did it.
I think that's a great perspective to have on it too. Like so many people that we talk to on a day-to-day basis where they want to do something but don't want to take the risk or don't want to, they like the safety net of whatever job they're at now or whatever easy pursuit that they've been in for the last couple of years in college, whether it's finance, account, whatever it could be. But their real true dreams are something that's in a completely separate lane, but they just won't take the jump to get over to that side. And then, they end up regretting it, or they end up staying in the same place. And, I think you having that mindset, or I should ask you, do you think having that mindset is really the number one key trait for an entrepreneur, or is it something, more broad?
I think that's number one. I think you need to believe in it more than anybody else does because, dude, like growing up in this area, I love it here. No disrespect to Boston, I'm a huge Boston guy. Everybody knows that, but there's a lot of kids around here, dude. Like even some of the people that you think close to you, like they hate on you initially, and I just think that comes from an insecurity within themselves to go out and pursue like what they really want to do. And you see it, bro. Like we're just talking about, like these kids, they'll get the 9 to 5 and they look forward to Friday and Saturday going out, Sunday recap what happened Friday and Saturday, then it's the same cycle for years. And there's no hate on that. I don't think that's a bad thing, but I know that there's a lot of kids that get fallen into that cycle of like, damn, like I wish I could do more. I wish I could do more. I'm not happy at my job. Like, so I think that number one, that's the mindset you have to have, is putting yourself in comfortable positions to kind of just go after something. Even if like my music background, I have no music background, no music degree, nothing. I don't even know how to open like I know how to open projects and like open the DAWs and stuff, but I don't know anything about music theory. So it's just about diving into something and figuring it out, dude. Half the people our age that are entrepreneurs are just winging it, dude.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's a willingness to learn, I think.
That's such a good point, man. That 99% of entrepreneurs wing it on a day-to-day basis.
People who are already successful.
They have to, man. And I think, just trusting your vision and trusting, I guess, your own like work ethic and abilities is key too. But I kind of want to dive in a little bit more specific with the artists that you've worked with. Like I said earlier in your intro, your artists have surpassed millions and millions of views on, pretty much across all the music platforms, right? All the major ones, Spotify, Apple Music, SoundCloud, YouTube, whatever. What is it like seeing an artist that you know personally, but at the same time is viewed by millions of people? What was that like maybe the first time, and what is, how has it kind of changed over time since you've been working with them for, however long you have at this point?
Yeah, it's a funny feeling, dude, right? Like, I've been in situations before where, like, you're out and you hear a song and they don't know that you managed that person, or they don't know that, like, you have managed a producer to produce the song, and it's like a funky feeling.
Yeah.
Because at first, like, I'm the type of guy who's like, I don't talk about it too much because I'm, like, more on, like, the humble side of just, like, oh, like, that's cool, but, like, I don't want to, like, be boasting about it. So, like, it takes a lot to get it out of me at first, but it's cool, man. Like, and I'm just happy to see the people that I care about win. That's, like, the biggest thing for me is, like, I noticed with starting this is like I'm passionate about not only like the people I work with in like a music sense, but just as people, dude, good people, Like I just want to see all my friends win. And I feel like a lot of the time when like milestones like that happen where we hit 1, 2, 3, 4 million streams, whatever it is on a song, like it brings you back to that first place where you first started. You're like, damn, bro, like we couldn't have even imagined getting 100,000 streams on this song 2 months ago or 3 months ago or whatever it was. Now we're sitting here at this place, and it's awesome to reflect.
Yeah, absolutely. And you say like you don't like to boast and brag about it, and you obviously want to remain humble. Does that come from a place of like never being satisfied, or is that coming from a place of like I don't want people to perceive me as someone that is just trying to boast about whatever accomplishments you have, right? Where does it come from? That?
I think probably both, honestly. Like I think like the humbleness is like one, I think a lot of people don't understand the music industry. At least from the angle that I'm coming from. So half the time when I have conversations with people, like I almost get like not like sick of them, but you almost like you don't want to over explain. So like that's one of the reasons. Two, like I just I didn't grow up that way. My parents didn't raise me that way. They didn't raise me to be like they were the type of people who, like I said, we come from an athletic background. They were like the people who are talking about how good they are like not the people who are good. It's the people who other people talk about. So I always had been raised with that mindset. Shout out mom, shout out dad. And that's kind of like I just attributed that to all parts of my life and anything entrepreneurial I was doing. I just like just wanted to be that way.
Yeah, just keep your head down, just keep working, working in silence, and letting kind of the music and the accomplishments speak for themselves, and kind of just being in the background. And I love that, and I think that's a very important trait to have. Especially when you start really seeing success and true growth. It's like never get ahead of yourself, never be satisfied, and just kind of keep working. But still just diving in with the artists that you've worked with and having the amount of views that they have and the amount of fans that they have at this point. Like I said earlier, we talked to someone from Boston, a local artist from Boston, King from 98, and I kind of got a perspective on what it's like to be an artist. Really in the creative process, but I want to hear from your point of view. What is it like working with somebody and seeing the creative process from a different perspective? What differentiates an average artist from the million listeners a month artist or whatever that is? Just separating themselves. What is it, and what is it like kind of seeing that from I guess a step back?
I think it's very interesting, a lot of primarily like the Boston scene is like mostly run hip hop based, urban based. So working with artists like locally who do reside in like the indie and in alternative space, it's very different from your normal kind of experience with somebody who might be, rapping or making that like type of hip hop music. But overall, like I think that like the biggest thing if you're a music artist and you're listening to this and like you're trying to get your music out there is like just keep your head down. Like you were just saying, like you have to be prepared to do this for the next 10 years. Like it's not like some people have overnight success, some people it takes 10 years to get success. But like at the end of the day, as long as you're in it for the long run, you're doing the right things, you're making content, you're pushing your music, you're trying to get it in front of new people, you're playing shows, you're in the same rooms with people. Like my biggest asset as a manager originally when I started, because like I said, I had no background, no understanding of what being a manager in the music industry even meant, was like my ability to speak, was my ability to network, was my biggest asset. So when we were having a little bit of a viral moment with my artist Dead Soder, which like eventually led us to sign a bigger distribution deal, like I took that opportunity myself to like literally just cold DM people in the music industry that I had mutuals with, and I'd be like, yo, like let's just connect on a call. As soon as I got him on the phone, I'd know that I'd be able to make an impression. And so I'd like for anybody out there, even artists should be doing that nonstop. Like hop in other artists' DMs, producers' DMs. Like don't be afraid to just connect and build with your peers, because like that's something where you never know. Like how many songs do you know that have 2 artists in it that boom and change careers? You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of artists get caught up in being like, I just want it to be my song, I just want it to be my song. So just don't be afraid to collaborate.
or being too nitpicky too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that can be a big problem, especially like when you see with these bigger artists that take 2 to 3 years to produce an album at a time. You know, it's like I don't know if that's whatever their kind of creative process is, or if it's like I don't think this is good enough to be put out to the public yet, right? It's like just trusting your instinct, trusting your gut. I think that's also very important.
Huge, dude. I think a lot of artists, like even ones I've worked with or not worked with, or had conversations with that my buddies manage or whatever, they're their biggest enemies sometimes. Like they'll gatekeep their best song. Like I have, like my artist Dylan right now has this one song that I've been pushing for him to drop for so long, and like just something about like the way, I don't know, maybe it's not as personal of a connection as it is right now for him because he made it a year ago or whatever. But again, I try to give my artists that I work with, and I feel like most managers should, like give them like room to breathe. You know what I mean? Like they don't want to be hounded by somebody who doesn't know anything about music theory. You know what I mean? So end of the day, like I do think that some artists need to like get out of their own way and just release it. What's the worst thing that could happen? There's 8 billion people in this world. Like yeah, you may have worked on that song for 2 months, so it sounds so repetitive to you where you get sick of it, but there's 7 billion people in this world that have never heard that song. So just get out of your own way, release it, and then do the work, do the workload.
Going off of like the lane that you're in right now, I feel like I don't know if this is 100% true, but I feel like for some people there's a kind of a negative connotation to be associated with a label or a manager or something like that, and instead of doing it independent, which is kind of like the thing to do now, I guess, when you're an artist. What differentiates Adelace, you as a private entity, from going independent route, right? Like what separates you in terms of that?
I think so. The independent game is very tricky, right? Because you have distribution deals, you have sync licensing deals, publishing deals, then you have label deals, which are record deals. Then you have management firms like we do that sign management contracts, and like being truly independent, like, is not only just doing it yourself. Like a lot of these independent artists that we talk about that are huge, like Brent Faiyaz is entirely independent. His side project Sonder, Russ, like Chance the
First to do it, just say it.
No, literally. And like these people, they all have management teams. So independence usually really like lies in the term of like record deals, where there's a lot of artists that get taken advantage of, what they call 360 deals, where they sign them to like what they like, let's say like 150 grand. But for someone who like hasn't seen that type of money ever, that's a lot of money, dude. Anybody, that's a lot of money. You know what I mean? So like, but what they don't realize is they're not just selling like their rights to the music, they're selling almost their voice and their creative control and all these things. So there's a lot of labels out there that are super predatory with stuff like that, because like, think about it, they have, you go to any of the major record labels, think about how many cash cows they have, you know what I mean? So they're working on those schedules, and I've had buddies that have signed to like Interscope, that's like arguably one of the biggest labels in the world, and they just get like shelved because there's so many other artists that are like trying to put out projects. And I don't think labels are inherently bad. I think that there are bad deals out there, but I think there's enough information in 2023 where like if a record label's interested in you, and there's levels to it. Like an A&R can reach out and be like, oh, like we have our eye on you. But like really when a label's interested, like they want to start talking numbers, they want to talk contracts, and like when that happens, like educate yourself. Either get a lawyer or educate yourself. You know what I mean? So if you sign a bad deal in 2023, like it's almost on your fault. Just because it's, think about, like you said, you not even being in the industry, knowing how like labels are right now, like, you know what I mean? That says enough, I feel like. So
but you just see it all the time from artists just finally speaking out after so long of not dropping something, or just being quiet and just blaming everything on the label. You know what I mean? It's all the label's fault. It's always the label's fault. So I figured it's a tough industry to be starting. I mean, I know you've been doing it for a few years, but to get it up and running in a time where I feel like the thing to do is go independent. Right?
For sure.
You're trying to offer like a different kind of approach to the whole field in general. Is that what you're trying to do?
Definitely like more artist friendly. Like we want to be the management firm that is like I said, I have no background in music theory, but I care about the people I work with. I will never work with somebody that I don't have a personal relationship with, and that's the difference where like that alone says that you're not in it for the money. You're in it for the people, you're in it for the projects that they're pushing, like you're actually passionate about like the product that they're like bringing to this like space that might help somebody. Like I work in, like I said, the indie alternative scene, so it's a lot more like vulnerable about stories about their life, where it's like a little less algorithmic than like pop music or something like that. So a lot of the artists I work with like produce all their music themselves. So they do everything in-house, which like I always try to preach to artists nowadays. If you can learn to do all that stuff yourself, do it, because like if you really want to be secure, you want to be independent, you want to bag your like the publishing checks and all these sync licensing deals and these things that you'll get from owning 100% of your music, like you could be signed to a major label, you could have 10 million monthly listeners, but you could have less money in your bank account than somebody that has like 1 million monthly listeners because they own everything. So they're cashing in on all routes where like if you're at a label, you're splitting with your label and the deal like percentage wise usually isn't great. Then you have your manager, your lawyer fee, all these things that you have to pay for. So
no, I think that's a great perspective to have. But I want to talk about now the 5-year plan. The 5-year plan. So from an outside perspective, obviously you probably think I haven't done shit yet, right? Like, I haven't done nothing.
I'll always think that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I don't scratch the surface of what I'm actually supposed to accomplish. Where do you see this going in 5 to 10 years? What are the plans you have? Maybe not all the plans, you don't give away too much, but where do you want to see this company grow in 5 to 10 years? And how are you going to get there pretty much?
Yeah, so I think the 5-year plan is interesting to me because I try to live like very in the moment, very present. Like a lot of the stuff that I like think, like have you ever read the book, The 7 Spiritual Laws?
Absolutely, yeah.
Dude, so I apply a lot of that to my life. So like, it's hard to talk about the 5-year plan, but in reality, like where I want it to be is like I want to be in 5 years. I want to be at a place where we have actual funding to be able to dive resources into. Like I'm sick of having to sign a deal and go into an outside place to fund kind of like the artists that I work with, because a lot of these kids, like we have to sign some sort of deal to get thousands and thousands of dollars in marketing budget or anything related to funding. That's where I want to be in 5 years. I want to be at a place where like, okay, we sign a new act, we sign a new talent that we're all passionate about. We can be able to dive resources into this career. I'm really in the business of development. That's like you talk about like construction workers, how they develop buildings. That's exactly how I view artistry. Like that's why like I prefer to sign artists when I first start working with them, like lowest of low. Like I've started working with people before where they've been at less than 1,000 monthly listeners. Like I get like my rocks off, of like building something up, watching it skyrocket, and then like eventually getting to the point where it's almost like a little more hands off. So I like that repeat process because I like the grind of it, dude. It's
growing so much, to the point where it works for itself.
Exactly.
Much, right?
Exactly. Like it's an oiled machine. Then you can dive back into, and like as that happens, the more cash flow you get, the more money you can just repeat that process with the other artists that you're building. So
I think that's also important too. And I wasn't even thinking about that, but just like the resource, the more obviously the more money you're generating, the more resources you can offer these artists, which I think it's just to make their lives just that much easier when it comes to this entire thing. I think I never even thought of that kind of perspective, but I think in terms of the kind of, I guess, I don't know how to say it, but like your intentions, I guess, that shows how pure it is,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would be lying to say that like I don't want to make money doing this.
Of course, right?
It's a business at the end of the day. Of course I want to make money, but my first and always biggest like goal and moral with this thing is like I just want to provide opportunities for the people that I feel like get overlooked on, because we're in an industry that is extremely oversaturated and not in everything with now with like how short, like I said earlier, attention rates are, and like TikTok and all these apps that like ruined it, but I've also done wonders for artists. So I'll never speak a bad word on TikTok or anything like those platforms. But like, dude, like nowadays, like those platforms are breaking artists. Like labels back in the day, you had to sign to a label back in the day in order to break usually. You know what I mean? You had to hope that there was an A&R in the crowd at a show that you were performing in. Nowadays, you get kids in their bedroom that are making millions of dollars just sitting making TikTok videos, like promoting their music. And like, I think that being in a place like that, like, is super powerful because like, one, it showcases independence. You can do it entirely yourself. Two, you'll make more money in the long run. And then labels right now, their biggest offer to artists is that they're a bank.
Exactly.
They have infinite amount of money. So, and it is so easy I can't even like emphasize how easy it is for a label to literally see something trending on TikTok, like a song that maybe, let's say in the last week, there's been 4,000 videos made on TikTok of that song. Obviously that sound's gonna boom. It's so easy for the label to just pour gas on fire. Just pour money into it and then it just booms. Like I know that like one of the artist managers that I know personally, I won't say his name, just like, because I don't want to give away like his business plan, but like he's just like rinsed and repeated, like dropping money into like TikTok campaigns, and like their artists have just boomed. Like I'm talking like most recently they just had a song with the Chainsmokers. They flew him out to perform at like some festival in Japan for their own song. So like it's just like it's so easy for like when you have funding, it's a lot easier to be able to like just like have a really like viral moment.
Absolutely. And now let's go, before we get into, kind of advice, because I always say in every single podcast, we have a younger demographic that likes to watch this as well, and I want you to kind of give advice to those kids. But I want to talk about the Locals clothing brand, because I feel like that's something you're trying to get off right now and get a little bit of exposure. Why don't you talk about kind of how that came about and where you see that kind of going? Because I love the idea of that. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, so I've always had like a persona, like everywhere I go, like even in high school, bro, my name was like, people used to call me Young Hefty. That used to be like my name. Like, I'd walk down the hallways, they'd be like, Hefty. I'd literally show up to parties, I'd show up to house parties in high school. And they'd be like, are you that Young Hefty kid from Instagram? And I'd be like, just a wild name, but like, I had always had a persona. And so like, as I got to college and like, that evolved more, like it went from Young Hefty to like Visuals by Tyler, which was like the art kind of before I got into the music stuff. And then recently, within the last, I want to say year and a half, 2 years maybe, like I just switched it one day. Like one day I was at my apartment, this was before I graduated school, and I just was like, you're talking about it like a kid from your hometown, and you're like, oh dude, that kid's such a good kid. I was like, oh, he's a great kid, local kid. And then all my boys were like, bro, that's golden. Like they started ripping it. And then I realized that there was like a real attention kind of on that. And I was like, oh dude. And I'm like one of those guys, when that happens, I'm all in it. Like I'll sell on it. So like I like just changed my Instagram name to Local Guys High, like, and now everyone's always like, I'll go out in Boston, dude, and people will be like, oh, Local, I've heard about you, like from my friends, and they meet friends of friends. And like, so the idea behind the company was like originally clothing, and it's gonna be clothing, but like we're trying to make it an actual event company as well. Like we're gonna be like hosting like parties and throwing shows. Like I don't know if you're familiar with like the vodka dudes. So yeah, like I kind of got obviously they're not the first to originate that idea, but like they're doing great stuff, and like I just want to show people a good time, or I want people to come and have an experience and be like, dude, maybe the guys in the crowd are like, came, got a chick's number, but no one a chick, whatever, like it was a good time. Like at the end of the day, like when you can provide people some sort of experience, they're like, maybe it wasn't like some crazy party where they were massive celebrities, but I had a good time. You know what I mean? So my boys right now, they own they're living in LA. They manage this New England artist. I don't know if you heard of Hans Williams.
Oh yeah.
He's like, dude. So his two managers are my best friends in the music industry. They own a media brand called Sheesh Media, and it's like popping off. Right? Like they get invited to like Lollapalooza and all these festivals to interview artists and stuff, and they're throwing shows monthly now.
Wow.
And like that's exactly how they're doing it. They're treating it more as like a party and an experience rather than it's like a showcase to let's just come listen, like the artists perform, but it's more of an experience. So that's kind of like the route I'd like to go.
It's like a win-win for everybody involved.
Exactly. You're not just buying clothes, you're buying like you're subscribing to the brand's story.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of
a great way to put it. You're subscribing to the brand's story. Yeah. It's like that's a good way to encapsulate experience, I love that, man. I'm excited for the stuff you're gonna have coming out for that. I want to obviously keep you posted with the details of whatever events you're throwing. But I just really like the artwork. I love the simplicity of the brand. I think that's when we were creating Credo, it's like we want to create something simple but sticks.
Exactly.
Simple but sticks. And I think you actually found a really good.
What my ideation was for that?
What?
I wanted people to be able to wear it out to the bar and not feel like it was merch.
Exactly.
That's exactly what. So I co-own it with my little brother. Who you actually I feel like we get along with a lot.
Really?
Dude, he's the biggest fitness guy. He plays college hockey. Dude, you would literally love my brother.
Yeah.
Like he's like just like me.
Where's
He's
he
a
from?
lot more athletic, way better looking. No, Southern Maine. Oh, he was just a freshman this past year. Yeah. So, but no, like so I co-owned it with him, and like the ideation behind literally how simple it was I want people to be able to wear it to the bar and not feel like they're wearing like just somebody's face or somebody's merch. Like I want it to just feel like a brand. Like you see the essential stuff, bro. So simple, so simple, and like people just live for that stuff right now. So that was the ideation.
I agree. I think it's awesome, and I want to comment on that, even though that's not the main reason why we brought you on. But what I want you to do now is, like I said, we got a young demographic who watch this, and I want you to give advice, not just to a young entrepreneur, but someone who feels like, you said you're more of a creative entity. You kind of swayed away from the athletics and the normalcy of what a teenager kind of life or perception on life is. And I feel like there's a lot of people that feel that way now at a younger age, maybe. What is your advice to them? What is your advice to that person that feels like, I'm not a mathematician, but I'm an artist and I have this creative ideas, and they just don't know how to kind of express it or which way to go about it? What would be your advice to them? And just kind of your own point of view, what you think they should do at this point in time?
I think like the younger you are, take the leap, dude, because like I think there's a societal like timestamp on things where like if you're 30, like you have to be settled down, married with kids, you have to have this amount of money, like a mortgage, you know what I mean? Like I think that's all made up. I think it's like you, no matter if you're here, if you're alive, you're living, dude, that's time to go work on yourself, work on a business, work on an idea, execute. So if you're for the younger generation listening to this, like just take the leap, dude. Like I grew up in the smallest of small towns, like, and there's not many people doing like some sort of creative entrepreneurial endeavor, and like you're gonna have to you're gonna get to a point where kids are gonna be like, oh, like he's trying to do X, Y, and Z. But like we talked about, like I just think that comes from a lack of insecurity of people like wanting to pursue the things that they want to pursue really, and like so that was the biggest thing for me, was getting out of my own way and just being like, dude, forget what these people say. Like I have an idea, I want to execute it, and you'll notice when you start really kind of those little milestones start going in, you'll see people switch up from like kind of like joking about it to like, oh, like curious about how that happens. And like a lot of people garner success, I feel like financially, where I don't think that's the only way to kind of measure success. I think it's actually probably on the lower end of like most kind of like entrepreneurs, what they would say is like a lot of entrepreneurs kind of get their rocks off to like building something and like, little milestones and little achievements. Like be present in those moments, those little like achievements, because that's what's going to lead to the big things, and you don't want to miss that. Like for artists that I work with, I say that to them all the time. It's like be present in your artist moment. There's like a Drake interview, the rapper right out with Drake. He says that be present in your artist moment, because like you'll never be able to get those moments back. Like the bigger and bigger you get. So for the younger generation, just take the lead. That's what I'd say.
I love that, man. I love that. Well, we'll wrap up. We've been here for a good amount of time. I appreciate you coming on, man. I'm looking forward to seeing all the artists that you work with currently continue to grow, and then any of the new people that you put on. I know that they're going to be stars. I know that you have a good head on your shoulders, you have good intentions, you're pure, and I'm excited to see the growth that you keep going on for years to come, my man. So thank you very much. And that's episode 8. Any final words for the camera?
Shout out mom, shout out dad. I always get asked this. They're like, plug the stuff that you want to. Shout out my mom, shout out my dad. Normalize shouting out your family instead of plugging your businesses.
Absolutely. Remember where you came from. Episode 8. Thank you very much. Have a good day, everybody.
Alrighty. Unreal, my guy. Sorry, my hands are mad clean, bro. My hands are sweaty as fuck. I was like, every time he went to shake my hand, I was like, bro, you think.
Ain't nobody doing it like us.